Hey everybody, great to have you back here in the fish tank. It's Minion Masters patch notes time. And boy do we have a lot to go through. But before we dive in, just a reminder, hit that subscribe button so you keep fully up to date with Minion Masters stuff here in the fish tank. Right, update, version 2.6. It's going to be called Minion Masters Power Up. What are we going to have in this expansion? Right, so it's going to be dropping on Thursday, the 25th of July. As mentioned, it's going to be version 2.6. Because this is a new expansion, which will be 3 months as always, we're going to have a free DLC. And this DLC is going to be themed around the faction Zenshi. So I think Feng the Wanderer is in there. We're going to have a new season pass, of course. We're going to have 1 new card. And the reason we've only got 1 new card is because we have this small feature being added. Alternate Master Perks. Also in the Season Pass, we're going to have new cosmetics, as mentioned, the alternate Master Perks, and of course a bunch of balance changes and a new tournament. So the DLC should be live Thursday evening, sort of 7 o'clock Denmark time, Central European time, and that should be available for a week as always, so make sure you grab that. Right, so let's talk about the new card that is being added in this one. This is going to be called Karmic. And as mentioned, this is a Zenshi minion. Zenshi ranged minion. So he's a 4 mana, 300 health, 30 damage, 37 DPS ranged minion. But he has a special thing where he gains this Karmic shield. So he doesn't spawn with it, but every 6 seconds he gains this Karmic shield. And the shield prevents all damage the next time he would take damage. So it's a one-time only shield, but it reflects 100% of the damage. So if he takes a huge hit from a cleaver, for example, he'll take no damage, and all that damage will go back to the cleaver. You know, there's going to be way less exciting occurrences of what that shield does. Kind of difficult to see how good it's going to be because it is just a timed thing. But of course it will have a visual so you can tell when the shield is up, so you have to... I guess it's kind of more for the opponent to play around the shield rather than you as the player playing in a specific way to get the shield. Maybe you'll play it a little bit deeper so it gives you time to get the shield before it gets up there. So 4 mana, has the same health and range as a Crystal Sentry, which means it is a ranged minion, but it's only pretty low range of 4 I think. But because it's ranged, it can hit air. Its DPS is lower than something like a Crystal Sentry because it kind of makes up in its value proposition with this Karmic shield. It's also a little faster. Right, so that's the new card. Let's talk about the new cosmetics. We've had some cool skins recently that, of course, available in the paid Season Pass, Battle Pass, whatever you want to call it. And we got another awesome one here. The Plague Doctor Diona. So, as you can see, one of the cool things about this skin is that we also have a full reskin of Ruffles. And Ruffles is kind of this Frankenstein's monster version of Ruffles where it's sort of put together with bolts and bits of scraps. And an awesome looking skin. I like it. And then also, just carrying on with the regular cosmetics, we get the new avatar for Karmic. And we get a new emote for Valorian. Right, so that's some of the new content, and of course the other thing we need to talk about, and we're not going to talk about it too much depth in this video because we've already covered it quite a lot previously, are the alternate Master Perks. I'll put a link up here if I remember to check out the video on that. And basically the idea of this is that each Master to start with is going to get a new alternate perk. So if you're new to Minion Masters, each Master has 3 perks. You unlock them during the game via XP. And up until this point, each Master just had Perk 1, Perk 2, and Perk 3. 1 variety of each, and it was very static. Whereas now, each Master is going to get 1 new alternate perk. That might be Perk 1, Perk 2, or Perk 3. I think ideally, eventually... best case scenario in the future is that we'll have an alternate perk for each Master, but that's in the future. Let's talk about what we're doing now. So that's going to be 14 new alternate perks dropping all at once. So it's going to be interesting for sure with regards to bugs that might come up from these perks that haven't been picked up in testing. But the PTR's done a good job recently with testing these out. And of course, balancing these perks. So these perks have got to be balanced in terms of balance with other perks for that master, and also balanced in the game overall. Just to quickly go over it again, if you're more interested in the alt master perks, check out my video. But you can select them ahead of time before the match starts when you create your deck and add your master to it. And you can also change it up until the point that perk unlocks in the game. And if you look at the different perks, some of them are super deck based, where you're kind of making the decision ahead of time, I want this perk, whereas other ones are reactive depending on who and what you're playing against. You might change perks. So if, for example, if you've got a master with an alternate perk 2, all the way up until that perk 2 unlocks, you can make the decision of which one you want, and then once it's locked in, boom, it's locked in. Right, so as mentioned, we're going to start with 14 alternate master perks, and then more are going to be added in the future. I think the idea is, so this patch is one card and then all of the 14 original alt perks. The next patch I think is going to be 2 new cards. The patch after that is going to be 1 new card and 2 alternate perks. And then going forward. So we're going to start off with a bunch of new perks, and then as the seasons and the months progress, we'll be getting more and more perks added to the game. So this is definitely going to make this interesting. And just very quickly, the alternate master perks. We've got Diona's Black Potion, Ratbow's Squeak Attack, Tronvir's Runic Attunement, Morelia's Right to the Dead, Mordar's Tomb of the Deathless. We've got Miloen's Zanian Spellbook, Apep's Slave Driver, Valorian's Fervent Warrior, which is changed from how the original proposal. So that's the one that's changed the most, I think. King Puff's Mimic Magic, Volko's Endless Rage, Setsu's Air Support, and we'll talk more about Setsu in a minute. We got Rex Mass Illusion, Stormbringer's Cloud Cover, and Ravager's Overpower. Right, so that's the new stuff. What is being adjusted? Now, as always, we're going to have a look at the balance changes, what's getting made stronger, what's being made weaker, what's being changed in all sorts of different ways. And remember, if you're always wondering what is currently strong in the meta, check out my meta video. I'll put a link up here if I remember, so you can check that out and see what's going on this season. And of course, next season we'll have a new one. Right, so let's have a look at the buffs first of all. So, Crossbow Clubhouse is getting a buff. Getting a little worried about this, because this is one of the cards that's getting buff after buff after buff. It was very weak when it launched, and it's getting more and more buffs. So, this time its attack cooldown is going from 0.7 seconds to 0.5 seconds, so it attacks more quickly. Its DPS goes up. It does 40 DPS. It lasts for 10 seconds. It puts out 400 max damage, and then of course you get the crossbow dudes when it's destroyed. So is this a card that was so weak at the start that it needed all these buffs to become usable, or is it going to be a buff too far? I guess we'll find out. Right, next one's a change I like, the Frostberry Bearer. So remember, it has the 2 charges on its back to Glen's Brew friendly minions when they get down to 50% health. Now, as you might have noticed, it has an extra barrel under its chin, and that's going to be reserved for itself. Now, I think that barrel's always been there, but now it has a use. So basically, when itself gets down to 50%, it can Glen's Brew itself. So you can use it more effectively as a tank. That was always the issue I had with it. It was kind of a tanky minion. It had this thick hide tank mechanic, but you didn't want it to die first because it wanted to support other things. So now you can tank more effectively with it. And just to confirm, that extra charge is only for itself. So you can't use it on 3 other things. It's only 2 plus itself. I think this is going to be a big buff for this guy. We'll see how that works out. Right, next up, a small buff to the Frost Feathers. So this is not the Frost Feather Flyby. This is just the flying version of the actual minion version. So their attack cooldowns going down, so their DPS goes up. Don't see them very often. Maybe you'll see them more now. Right, next up, Highland Huntress gets a little bit of a love. She was very, very strong when she started, got some nerfs. Now she's getting a little bit of a buff. Attack cooldown going down, so again her DPS goes up. She's better against Horde. Doesn't affect her Vicious Strike because that's every 8 seconds. Right, next up a small buff for Nether Step. So previously Nether Step would give you a Swarmer based on the number, or a Swarmer for each Voidborn card that you had in your hand. Now it's going to be 1 Swarmer plus an extra 1 for each Voidborn card in your hand. So you always get that 1 Swarmer even if you have no Voidborn cards in your hand. Just a little bit of extra value. Doesn't really change too much about it. Right, Null Matrix. So this was added very recently and was not very well received. Didn't really do enough. Also didn't really affect all buffs correctly. So it's getting improved. It's getting bug fixed a little bit. So it will, remember that this removes positive effects on minions and then deals damage. For some reason when it was launched it didn't remove Spirit, so that's been added. There was a bug that it didn't deal with Giant Growth correctly. That's been fixed. It removes Divine Shield now, which I don't think it did originally. And also now, if it does remove a buff, it does an extra 50 damage. So, you know, good use cases for this. Remove a bunch of buffs, do 150 damage for 4 mana. Hopefully that will see some more play. Okay, next up we have a buff to the Protocol Assassin, the Robo Ninja if you like. Move speed going up from 5 to 8. Not sure if that's a great buff or not. Attack cooldown going down a little bit, so we'll just attack a little more quickly, do a little bit better DPS. But again, just like the Highland Huntress, doesn't affect really the ability, the Arc Slash. Next up we have a buff to Rampant Growth. So removing the knockback. So remember, Rampant Growth sucks up all of the Growth Burst Shrooms, puts them into your target of choice. If it's a Zenshi minion without Giant Growth, it will give it, and it will also heal it. Now previously it would also stun and knock back stuff, but now they've removed the knockback because sometimes a stun and a knockback kind of counteract each other a little bit, because you're stunning something which is going to be great, but you're knocking it back, so you can't take advantage of doing damage to it while it's stunned. So the knockback in most scenarios I think will be better, not necessarily all of them. Okay, now the Screaming Scrat gets a little bit of love, damage going up from 75 to 90. Definitely been overshadowed a lot with regards to play rate since the Rocket Scrat kind of came in, so maybe getting a little bit of love here. You can still take bridges with the Screaming Scrat with the new bridge rules, but not kind of exactly like you could before. So I think that got a little bit weak with the bridge changes. Doing 90 damage instead of 75, it kills things like spear throwers, so it can suddenly trade a lot better in certain scenarios. Stormy gets an attack cooldown increase or reduction from 3 seconds to 2 seconds, so it attacks a lot more quickly. Its DPS goes up. It can stun lock things quite efficiently now. But of course it does self-damage, so if it's doing more self-damage, it makes it harder for you to keep it alive. So if it's damaging itself, it does 50 DPS to itself. A healer, a priestess for example, heals 33 healing per second, so that can't keep it alive indefinitely. A healing shrine does 50 heal per second, so that kind of can. So kind of a double-edged sword with this buff to Stormy here. Right, next up we have Urclaw. So Urclaw, when it gets down to 50% and it does its roar, previously it knocked everything back. So kind of similar to the Rampant Growth changes, instead of knocking it back, it's going to stun them. So again, the knockback has its place, but it's kind of frustrating because you knock stuff back, you can't DPS it while it's knocked back. So the idea now is for it to stun, and that might synergize quite nicely with things like Shen Stormstrike. Just thinking kind of a little bit outside the box. Right, so those are the buffs. Let's have a look at the rebalances, which are things that be changed a lot in different ways, rather than just a simple buff or a nerf. And the first one's a big one, Setsu. Now this is Setsu has been kind of problematic in certain situations with her perma-stun. That's the big issue, right? It's not about whether Setsu's too strong or too weak. It's the case of her perma-stun being like really just anti-fun to play against. And if you don't have any sort of direct counters to remove her, then she gets way too much value. And I think the reason this is happening now is because of the alternate master perks. If they don't change her current perk, no one's going to use the alternate one because the current one is just super strong. Right, so perk 2, the combat reload. Still going to reload just like normal, but the next shot after a reload will do an extra 60 damage. So normally you do a 40 damage per shot. The next shot after a reload will do 100 damage. And then perk 3, the high powered laser. So instead of the first shot in the clip being the high powered laser, which is the previously did double damage and stunned and pierced and all that, it's going to be the 5th shot. Now that's not the 5th and final shot in the clip, that's just the 5th shot overall. So if you do 2 shots and then reload, the 3rd in that clip will be the 5th overall. The high powered laser will also not do any bonus damage. So instead of the 1st shot in the clip, it's the 5th shot overall, doing the stun, the pierce, but not doing double damage. And of course you can tell straight away that every 5th shot is not going to allow you to perma-stun like you could before. Is it going to be too weak overall compared to before? I guess we're going to find out. But I think this is a healthier design. And let's see how she lands. Definitely not a strong master overall, but in specific scenarios previously in the hands of good players, she was kind of unplayable against, which was just not really fun for anyone. But let's see how that works out. Right, next up we have a rebalance to the Scrat Launcher. Love it or hate it. One thing to mention, of course, is no wildcards anymore in any modes, any ranked modes, apart from randoms. So the Scrat Launcher suddenly doesn't become such a problematic thing on its own in sort of pre-mades. So the changes to the Scrat Launcher, mana cost going down from 5 to 3, but the damage being reduced from 100 to 60. So that means if it gets its maximum amount of damage off, previously it could do 1,000, now it'll only do 480, which, you know, if you think about it before, 1,000 damage, that's 1/3 of the Master's health for 5 mana, if it's uncontested. That seems kind of insane, right? So now the maximum damage is going to be 480, slightly less damage per mana cost as well, so damage going down from 100 to 60 per hit, health going down from 400 to 150, so it's going to be easier to shut it down. And the duration going down a little bit from 30 seconds to 24 seconds. Healthy change, need to be careful not to change it and nerf it and destroy it too much. Needs to still have a place, but let's see how that works out. Right, Zeppelin Bomber has received a lot of changes recently, and here's another one. So the problem with the recent change, where it starts with a barrel shield, and then if you have the Scrat Swarm, it's gained haste but lost the barrel shield, is that in a lot of scenarios, the basic version, not the activated version, was the one that you wanted, because that barrel shield makes it so tanky compared to the basic one. So this change is trying to make the activated version a little bit more attractive. So basic damage going down from 60 to 50, health going down from 85 to 75, but if you do activate it with the Scrat Swarm, the 5 Scrats in the opponent's side, it will now gain haste and rage, as well as losing the barrel shield, whereas previously it would only gain haste. So trying to make that activation more enticing and something that you might try to do rather than before. Right, next up we have a nerf to Apep. Again, if you followed my meta videos, you'll notice that Apep is the most played master for a long time, and for good reason. So slap on the wrist, perk 1 and perk 3 timers going up from 33 seconds to 35 seconds. So that's your free 2 mana card and free 4 mana card. You'll just get them less often and overall less value. Is it going to be enough? Probably not, but it's a step in the right direction. Right, Bounceberry Flinger's also getting a nerf, attack cooldown going up to 2.5 seconds from 2.3, so their overall DPS is going down. So remember, the flingers are always kind of awkward because you get the growth burst shroom, which is massive, and then you get these decent-ish anti-air minions, so they're trying to claw back the overall value there. Nether Bats, attack cooldown going up a little bit, just a worse DPS, going to trade a little bit worse. Now, Skeleton Crew, this is one of the cards that's a massive winner when we come to talking about the bridge changes, because you can spawn them directly on a bridge and they're slow, so even if they walk back, they will grab that bridge. So we're seeing a lot more Skeleton Crew cards played both in and specifically outside of accursed decks, which just shows how strong they are. And again, from my meta, looking at the cards that were wildcarded the most, this card was wildcarded the most in randoms, 7 times as much as the second most wildcarded card. So it was kind of insane. So they're getting a little bit of a slap on the wrist, but it's not going to change a lot of the use case if you're using them outside of accursed decks, especially in solos. So the copies allowed is going down from 3 to 2, so you can only have 2 of them in your deck in randoms. And the Accursed Ascension bonus is going down from an extra 3 to an extra 2 skeletons. So a little bit of a nerf there, but in certain scenarios where you're using it outside of an Accursed deck in solos, nothing changes. Right, nerf to Slitherbound. So reminder, this will affect all Slitherbound, so Slitherbound, Chain Gang, whether you get them from Core Slitherbind, and so on and so forth. So their poison duration, which is the amount of poison that they apply per attack, is going down from 3 seconds to 2 seconds. So that's quite a substantial nerf, because poison is 20 DPS. So 3 seconds worth of poison, that's 60 damage. 2 seconds is down to 40 damage. So that will definitely affect how much poison and how much effectiveness they can have. So let's see if that brings them back into a balanced state and people start using other things, or if they're still one of the units of choice. Right, Unholy Ground, we see a lot of this. Again, this is an accursed spell with an ascension ability that you see outside of accursed decks, which is kind of good but also kind of bad. It kind of suggests that it's strong and then like double strong in ascension decks. So the duration is being reduced from 7 seconds down to 6 seconds, so it will kind of loiter less, but it will still summon the same amount of skeletons. So it summons 5 skeletons previously over 7 seconds, now you get them over 6 seconds, so you get the skeletons a little quicker. That's definitely a word, but you could argue that maybe that's even better in some situations. Right, and of course the one we've been waiting for, nerf number 17 for the Wartrack Dreadnought. Again, my meta shows this as the number 1 card, and it's getting another slap on the wrist. Is this going to be enough to make it balanced? It's insane to think of all the nerfs we've had so far, and it's still strong. So, attack cooldown going from 2.2 to 2.5 seconds. So that's its basic attack from either 1 or 2 cannons. So, less DPS overall. And then it seems like the missile scrap, the thing that it fires from its back when it gets to perk 3, is the thing that kind of makes it really problematic to deal with. It's the late game perk 3 version 1 that seems very strong. So missile scrap, range going down from 14 to 10. It's not going to be able to cover quite so much distance. The AoE range of the missile scrap, when it lands, it's not going to hit such a big area, down from 4.5 to 3.5. And the cooldown of that missile scrap going up from 4 seconds to 5 seconds. So you have just less overall value from that missile scrap. Bigger time while it's on cooldown. You can push into it at that moment, for example. So let's see if that brings it into a more balanced state or not. It's definitely going to be weaker. Is it going to be okay? You know, the devs have taken the kind of the sort of granular, let's nerf it a little bit, is that enough? No. Let's nerf it a little bit again, is that enough? No. But, you know, which is kind of okay. You don't want this card being desperately strong and then desperately weak and sort of yo-yo in between the two. But just nerfing it a little bit ends up with it being too strong for a long period of time. So, not ideal. Right. We've got a few fixes and improvements. Not too many, because the devs have been working primarily on getting the alt perks fixed, but hopefully once the alternate master perks are all sorted, then they can revisit again and have a look at fixing some bugs. There's not really many severe gameplay bugs at the moment. The biggest thing I would like them to address is looking at why people are getting these disconnection issues. That seems to be something that affects some people hugely, others not at all. So it would be nice if that could get looked at. Right, so a few things to go through here. So there was a bug with the Net Blaster attacking the Master Tower, which messed up the targeting. We noticed that on Renzo's stream, where there was a war track that was locked onto the Master Tower, but then it got de-aggroed from the Master Tower due to this bug and then started killing other things. So that's now been fixed. I noticed the Shield God of Light getting broken a few times when it gets frozen as it was trying to dash. That kind of broke him and he stopped attacking, so that's been fixed. And then an additional fix for getting disconnected at the end of the match. So I think this is the one where everything kind of hangs at the end of the match and nothing really happens. I haven't really had that at all, I don't think, this season. And there was a previous fix for this, but I think this is another case that can cause it that has now been fixed. So a few fixes there, and hopefully more to come in the future. Right. We've got tournaments again. So we got the Knights Duel number 37, 1v1. Always a good time. Always good to see you guys there. Hopefully you can join. I think it's going to be on Saturday the 17th, but double check with the link in the description to check that out. $400 prize pool. And of course, all things being well, this will be the first tournament with alternate master perks. The plan is to allow them. If there's some horrible bugs or whatever, then maybe some of them need to be banned, but we'll deal with that as it happens. And of course, reminder that the tournaments are all cross-platform now. So whether you're on PC, mobile or Xbox, you are welcome to join. Prizes for all, and it's super free-to-play friendly. No, that's the game, not the tournaments. My mind just went somewhere. It's super good for new players to get involved, to learn things, existing players to have some really competitive matches and stuff like that. Right. So, Power Up version 2.6 dropping Thursday. We got the new DLC. Make sure you grab that from Thursday evening onwards. We got the new season pass with the new Karmic card and the new Plague Doctor Diona skin, which looks great. We've got the alternate master perks, which should be very exciting to get our hands on and see how that goes. Balance changes, and of course that new tournament. Guys, we did it. We got through it. Thanks so much for your time. I'm excited about this expansion. As I said, there's going to be some stuff going on, probably with bugs and balance issues with the new perks. But, I mean, there's 14 new master perks. This is to be expected. And I do hope the devs are ready to react and hotfix where necessary to make this season a great one. As I said at the start, make sure you hit that subscribe button so you don't miss out on anything Minion Masters related here in the fish tank. If you enjoyed the video, give it a thumbs up. Make sure you've got those notifications on and all notifications so you don't miss out on any of these updates. Lots of cool more videos to come. Let me know what kind of videos you want to see. And that's pretty much everything that I wanted to say. I'm Bad as a Fish, and I'll see you again soon here in the fish tank.